Thanks, Tan. A more scholarly and less metaphysical definition of AR and comparing it to VR might be this. Essentially, total immersion is VR. The real world with digital object is augmented reality. Now, look, it's been 20 odd years that folks have been using technologies like augmented reality. About 18 years ago when I was at UQ, for example, the effort was very much research focused. So these huge beasties, silicon graphics machines, were sitting in a basement, millions of bucks, a lot of grunt needed in those days. And it was very much about research focus. So in this case, it was the drug design folks actually designing molecules, immersing themselves there, moving proteins around using hand controls, so total absorption. But things have changed and computing power has changed. In fact, tablets, Grunt really was only released 6 or 7 years ago, and there's been a lot of work on mobile learning. One of those folks who've done a lot of work in the area are a small outfit in Auckland, Unitech. And Tom Cochrane and James Oldfield there did a good deal of work around what they call iPedagogy. And this is looking at how the mobile device, the tablet device, was used in different academic disciplines. And one of the findings, and incidentally they didn't just focus on business, architecture, music and so on were also focused on. They looked at the constructivist pedagogy, what sort of affordance these devices brought, and where augmented reality really fits in is here with the mobility aspect, the GPS chip, and the fact that there is the grunt to process what used to be huge silicon graphics machines. I think it's fair to say that last year, 2016, we really saw a popularising of augmented reality when this silly game, Pokemon, came to bear, and like any fashion or trend, it's moved on since then. But we've seen some really interesting developments in other areas. From research that came out of UC Berkeley and UC Davis, this interesting experience of topography using augmented reality in a very different way. And I believe there's a local high school here at the Gold Coast that's also using this technology, so it's certainly become a consumer item. But let's have a look at an example here in geography, in tertiary education from Uppsala University in Sweden. So as we can see, this is literally a sandpit. Now the students here are looking at topology, they're studying hydrology, so there are clearly sensors from the ceiling mounted projector that are measuring distance to sea level. You can see the contours are actually being drawn in here, which is quite fascinating. They'll move around some of the sand and suddenly we get to sea level, and you'll notice that we get water flow. So their study of hydrology here is really interesting. Where I think it gets really interesting is when they bring in the clouds. So the student on the right is going to put her hands over what I'll call Mount Etna for now, and suddenly we get rain clouds happening and we get water flowing. So let's watch this. It's something you couldn't do in real world. And down comes the water and they can study hydrology in a very nicely augmented reality. I worked with Western Sydney University, and in human geography a couple of academics took students out on field trips, and this is an interesting use of augmented reality. They used a software called Erasma to overlay images of the scenery at the rocks, for example. They took the students from Parramatta down to the CBD. And that overlaid, as we can see here, historical footage from the 1800s, historical videos, other materials. So Erasma is a very popular package. If we shoot over to the other side of Australasia, Curtin University. Some interesting work being done there. Now Curtin have a strong technology emphasis, and WA of course has a strong mining focus. So the folks there designed an augmented reality package that would take a 2D layered plan for chemical engineers and assist them in visualizing the work for gas mining. Professor Wang has done some really interesting work there. Let's have a look at what they're doing. So architecture and planning obviously worked on this. There's that 2D plan. Now note the goggles that are put on in this case. These aren't immersing the wearer into a virtual world. All they're doing is holding the camera and adjusting the angle. So this is projected to a screen and the student can change their angle and that then allows the engineers to get an idea of how it works. They've also extended that, interestingly, to inventory control. So QR codes on various parts of the structure will link them into information about that manufacturing. It will help them with inventory control. It gives them a whole idea of how to put the darn thing together. So that's a very practical example of how AR is being used. One of the areas I've seen it used quite a lot is in health sciences. Nanyang Technological University in Singapore has done some really great work. Now, for anatomy and medicine, there's a bit of an issue in Southeast Asia, and that revolves around the fact that there's a shortage of cadavers. Now, those in the studies of religion field will tell us that it's most likely to do with the Taoist concept of filial piety, respect for elders. And because of that, bodies typically aren't donated. So augmented reality is being used to a great extent to teach the students anatomy. And now that's also alongside with plasticized pathology pots for the students to work with. So they do get something solid and real, but they also use augmented reality apps that Nanyang have developed. Now, there's a lot of research in a lot of areas. Field trips we've looked at engineering, we've looked at health sciences. In electrical engineering, some really great work coming out of the University La Laguna in Spain, where in electrical engineering, and there's great research there that's certainly come to OLT and we'll refer you to it, that works around teaching the students some really complex concepts by using, again, augmented reality. So great work there, but now what I'd like to do is give you some demos of these sorts of apps. I'm going to refer you to some work from the University of Tasmania where in ecology they've done some really good work with ecosystem reports, in this case the Tamar Valley. So I'll jump over to demos now and then we'll wind up. Right, so let's have a look at some of these devices. I'm going to use a tablet. It doesn't matter if it's an iPad or an Android tablet, and most of these apps are available. So let's actually start with a homegrown app. This one's a collaboration between Central Queensland, or CQ University, and Bond. Let's just jump in here and get straight into it. This is all about network engineering. So I have a couple of little icons I'm going to use and build a network. Let's see how it works. First of all, a switch. So the switch is an important part of the network. What do I add then? Typically, I'm guessing an electrical engineer or a network engineer might say a router. Well, we can see that these two connect. I'll just get a bit more space here. The two connect, the switch to the router. If I were to add a wireless device, we might see that that bounces from the router to the wireless device. And I could keep adding and changing and adding more devices and so on. So that's an interesting homegrown app in collaboration with CQ University. Anatomy. I already mentioned that folks like Nanyang Technological University are using these sorts of AR tools. I have here a paper that's from the Eliza Hall, Melbourne University histopathologist Priti Patel. The good professor is big on livers, and this article's on non-alcoholic steatohepatitis, the fatty liver disease. I'm going to use a very specific app here to bring that paper, that research paper, to life. In fact, we might have a look at the pathology in question in the paper. Now this is just a mock-up. Priti is totally unaware of the fact that I've done this for him. So let's get the app up and going and then see how we can use the code to bring up the pathology, to bring it to life. So we'll turn on the AR, and with this we can see our friendly cameraman in action, but we can also see the code bringing that piece of pathology to life, and we'll look at a cirrhotic liver. I'll make a bit of a exploration here of the gallbladder. There it is. We can see a lot of scar tissue happening. So it's brought that paper essentially to life. That's another clinical example. Let's move on to another one. So this is an interesting one. Now here at Bond, there are a lot of AR apps being developed for anatomy and the teaching of anatomy and pathology. What I'd like to do is show you a commercial one, and this in this case is just showing us a bit of an anatomy of the heart. So again, the camera doing its wonderful things. It's our lovely light board, but as soon as this picks up the image, we have the heart, which I can blow up, I can explore, and so on. And we've actually got audio here as well. So there are some clinical examples. What about in the area of marketing? Well, and indeed graphic design. Folks from String, who have now moved on to new technologies, but this is one that goes back a couple of years. If we imagine that design students and marketing students had designed a shoe, what could we do with that to bring a different experience? Well, we could bring that shoe to life. So we could actually go in there, explore the shoe. Indeed, we could change the colour. So I'd like that to be purple. I'd like that to be purple as well. We extend the virtual, and we can actually add that to an e-commerce site and do something really interesting. And the last example I'd like to show in the series of examples is one that was developed by the Tasmania University. And this was with ecologists looking at the Tamar Valley. Tamar AR is an app written just for this, and it will bring together the report, dating back now to 2012 from memory, to life. So let's have a quick look at it. So again, the camera on the report, move it a bit closer. Don't need a tutorial, thank you very much. It will load. It will show us some information. We can actually zoom into these different areas. So they got a B+ in zone 5, but I'm going to go have a look at zone 3. I'm going to explore zone 3 and have a look at what's there, get some extra information. Might change the perspective here, have a look around. We can see that this table I've got now comes alive with a part of the Tamar Valley, including that lovely eagle. Let's dive in, have a look. Okay, this now is quite separate from the report itself. I can look around, I can explore, I can see what some of the issues are with pollution, I can see some of the currents that are occurring, I can look up at the salmon fishing, just in the news recently actually, and essentially bring alive a totally different environment. So they're just a number of AR apps in different academic disciplines to give an overview of how one might integrate this technology into teaching and learning. Let's get back to the talk now. Now, a lot's happening here at Bonn that's well worth noting. Certainly the folks in HSM are doing some brilliant work around the use of augmented reality. Alan Sterling came to us via Central Queensland University. Actually, they've also rebranded CQ University. And there he was doing some work with paramedics. The paramedic campus, from memory, is in Townsville, and what he was doing was creating augmented reality images and models to assist the paramed students in working with the laryngoscopy. So to get that position right. In fact, they took it a step further and actually used 3D printing to print some of these devices. But here on the campus at Bond, some brilliant work being done. Let's hear from them.
Today, in our subject called Principles of Human Structure and Function, we're utilising virtual and augmented reality to provide the students with an interactive and engaging experience. They're able to go inside the human body, travel around inside the skull, for example.
To be inside the brain, it feels really cool to interact with the different parts of the brain.
It's amazing. You don't get that opportunity ever. There's no way you can have the experience of being in a human body.
First time I've ever done it, I'm actually amazed by it. It's pretty incredible. It answers all your questions that you have when you're studying, and it's something you can't look at in a textbook.
We've got the ability to take real patient data, and we can build a 3D mesh of that, and we can actually put that into the teaching materials.
It allows the students an ability to explore the model at their own pace. We can direct their learning and direct their attention, but it also provides them with an ability to satisfy their curiosity.
With this, they can take it home, they can do it whenever they like, at 3 in the morning, whenever it suits with their lifestyle.
3 of us here, myself, Dr. Athanasios Rikos, Dr. Alan Sterling, have developed this in-house. We wrote it from scratch with extra programmers and some assistants, which means every single feature of this virtual suite of programs that we've done has been tailor-made for these students in this subject, in these classes.
So as I said, there is a good body of evidence out there to support the use of augmented reality in teaching and learning. But I'd like to finish on a note of caution. let's not use technology just for the sake of it. In fact, one of my heroes is Professor Di Laurillard, who was previous Pro-Vice Chancellor of Technology at Open Universities in the UK. And she pointed out in her 2012 text, Teaching as a Design Science, that if we put technology first, learning is going to come second. So let's just ensure that this sort of technology is addressing a teaching need, a pedagogical need. Thank you for your time.